you can be smart in the brain and not smart of the heart. Or not have, a lot of life experiences or street smarts to, come across, even characters who are 10% of what John was, people who lie to you or cheat you or steal from you. I'd had a pretty easy, normal, upbringing, childhood and everything. And this was my first experience with evil.
So this brings me to the women at the heart of this story and who are just so brave in being here to tell it. Debra Newell and Tonia Bales. Thank you for being with us.
You're welcome.
So I wanted to start with a question from a reader, and I think it's a question I have too, which is, why has it been important to you to tell the story, that to speak out? It could not have been easy to reveal all of these intimate details about your life.
Go ahead.
Okay. Well, it's not that I'm psychic or anything, but I've known for more than a decade that this was not going to end well. And it was important for me to tell the story and to participate with Chris Goffard, who I came to trust and thought that he would do a good job. And it was important for me to participate because I wanted it to be told right. And on a maybe selfish level, it validated what I had been through. It's not something that in casual conversation, if someone asks you about it, you can adequately describe the story in less than 5 hours. Yeah.
Which is what it took.
Yeah.
What about you, Debra? Why was it important for you to talk about it?
Well, I put my dirty laundry out there, which was not fun.
I'm sure.
Yeah, but I felt that maybe I could be there for other women that have gone through this. So I was hoping that I could help someone.
Terrific. Which brings me to another question for you, Debra. I feel like, we talked about with the expert panel earlier, the question of shame and women coming forward, that from the outside, these can be really easy cases to judge. Why didn't you leave? Why didn't you do this? But, part of Meehan's MO, John Meehan's MO, was that he was very charming. And I remember having a conversation with you, and you told me, what people see is that minor percentage of his life, of our daily life, that ended up being devastating. So I'd love to get a sense from you of, what was your daily life like that would make sort of some of the weird things that maybe you were seeing and hearing seem not real?
Well, like she was saying earlier, it was too good to be true. From the moment I met him, he was very attentive, and he would do everything. I shouldn't say everything, but he treated me like a queen. And I think he lured me in, he listened to me, everything that came out of his mouth he seemed very intelligent, he seemed very into his children. He was successful. Just the fact that he was, had gone, well, what he told me was Doctor Without Borders. To me, that was very heroic. And
that he'd been in Iraq, right?
Yes.
With Doctors Without Borders.
Exactly. So here I am listening to this story thinking, wow, I've met a pretty decent guy.
Yeah. And as Chris says, with enough of the legal lingo and medical lingo to make it seem very real. Because I imagine in Newport Beach, one meets doctors here and there. It seemed believable.
I guess so.
Tonia, I wanted to ask you, when did you get an inkling that John wasn't quite who he had told you he was?
I think the only inkling that I got that he wasn't who I thought he was probably in the first 6 months that we were married, I went to his desk looking for some sort of supply, and I came across a picture of him. And the picture looked like a school photo, and it was dated, he would have been like 3 years old, because I thought he was born in 1964, and I'm going to say the photo may have said 67, and it looked like a school photo. But I was young, I didn't have any nieces or nephews, I didn't really know what age children, looked like. But I do remember having a visceral feeling at that moment, looking at that picture like something might not be right. For whatever reason, I put the picture back. I never said anything.
Mm-hmm. Because everything else seemed okay.
Everything else seemed okay. It can't be what I'm seeing,
Yeah.
But it really wasn't until, and a lot of people don't realize this, that he left me. They think I left this terrible person. No, he was leading a double life with another woman in Michigan, and it really wasn't until he left me that I got strong and brave enough to start seeking some questions, some thoughts that had been in my head, and I found his mother, who I'd never met, and I called his mother, and she said, I knew you would call me one day, and she's really the one who laid it out for me, about his age and his deceit and a drug use and a prior arrest, and I learned a lot that day.
And then did you confront him with it later?
I did, not immediately, but soon after. Mm-hmm. And that's really was a turning point where it got ugly for me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I think what made it challenging in listening to both of your stories is how quick he was with responses whenever you asked about, like, was there ever a time when you asked about something that didn't quite make sense and he was just like?
Within time, sure, because he would mix his stories up a little bit. Oh. And I'd say, wait a minute, I thought you said this. And he would have an answer, so.
And the answers always sounded plausible.
Yes.
What has been the most important thing that you've learned through this ordeal? I mean, I think one of the things that we want to talk about is almost like looking back and then also looking forward, thinking about the other women who might be facing situations such as this. What have you learned from it, and what do you want to pass on?
Well, I mean, I've thought a lot about, I'm raising 2 daughters, and I've thought a lot about their future and their men and dating, and how did I get so unlucky? I mean, sometimes people meet someone, they have an attraction, and they live happily ever after, and it's kind of luck. And I just thought, we research, and when we buy a house, for example, we inspect the roof, we look at the foundation for cracks, we ask people their opinion, and sometimes when we're picking our mate, which is the most important decision you'll ever make, emotionally, financially, physically, sometimes we just are kind of willy-nilly about it. It's just a good feeling that we have, and we don't do any research. And I would say that was, my mistake. I just believed him at face value. I didn't do any research. I didn't look for cracks in the foundation, and the consequences of that were pretty devastating.
Wow. What about you, Debra? What was the sort of takeaway from you for this experience?
Investigate. Listen to your children. I have some pretty wise children. Take time. Take the time to get to know the person and really know what you're doing.
So not jump in so
Never jump
quickly.
In that fast.
Yeah. My mother always used to tell me that when I was young. Don't
I've
jump
been told
into
that
it.
too,
I know,
but,
a million times, and you don't really think about how important that
Exactly.
piece of advice is,
Yeah.
but it really is. I wanted to add another panelist to our conversation. The young woman who fought John Meehan and won. Please welcome Terra Newell.
We should stand up for her. Yeah.
And Cash.
Awesome.
Hey, baby. Now,
Sit down.
Cash has never starred in any kind of theatrical production, so we'll see. But he's a hero, so.
Smile for everyone.
So,
Okay,
you know, Terra,
Sit.
you can let him wander around.
Is it okay?
Yeah.
Okay.
Terra, I wanted to start with you. You have emerged as I've read so much about what people have said about this podcast, and you've emerged as the hero in the story, and you have a lot of people that write to you. How have you dealt with that? How has it felt to sort of have inadvertently achieved that status?
A little weird, but I mean, it's really nice to get messages from other women who have been through a trauma or been through my mom's situation, and then they're just kind of inspired by the podcast and what I've said. And also, some have even asked for advice on what to do in their situation. So it's been really humbling getting that stuff.
Mm-hmm. One of the amazing things about this is, and I got to have dinner with them the other night, is seeing how close you have all become in the wake of this. You guys spent part of the Thanksgiving holiday together. You've now been hanging out over the course of these days in advance of this. Like, what kind of support have you found in each other? You know, two women who were with Meehan at very different points in his and your lives.
Mm-hmm. Well, I knew about Debra and knew the danger that she would be in, but being in the situation I was in, I could not call her, warn her. I knew that one of her children had called Detective Lucan, and I just felt that now that it was over, there's a little bit of guilt that I couldn't warn her, but I just felt like I needed to support her now, and going through what she had to go through for women from the past and saving all those women from the future, that he's not going to be able to hurt and destroy their lives and their reputation. And it was just important for me. I say we belong to an elite club.
And you said earlier we're the bookends.
And we're the bookends. We're the bookends. I was the first and she was the last as far as we know.
Who knows?
How has this been important to you, Debra?
Well, I got pretty beat up through the process, and I thought, wait a minute. There's so much more to the story that people don't understand. Mm-hmm. Until you're in my shoes, I don't think you really understand what you've gone through. For Tonia, she was a very educated, smart woman, and he was able to fool her. And so it made me feel a little bit more normal to know that he's that good.
Mm-hmm. I think that's something that comes up with a lot of women, that in these kinds of situations, like, am I going crazy? Am I going crazy? And what you were talking about, validation of knowing that this experience is not, that it's not you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That it's not you. What about you, Terra? How has this been an interesting familial bonding experience for you?
Well, it's nice knowing that there's people that were in his life in the past and stuff that don't hate me for doing what I did and had to do. So grateful for that.
And actually, I mean, over the course of this weekend, you guys made another, it seems that with every time Meehan comes up, a new discovery is made, and you made a new discovery this weekend just in simple conversations. So.
I think it was with Jacqueline.
With Jacqueline,
Jacqueline
your
brought
daughter.
it up. Yeah, she's out here somewhere.
Yay! So tell me a little bit about the discovery that you made.
Well, we were out to dinner the first night. Deborah took us out to a nice restaurant, and Jacqueline, who I think Jacqueline started this ball rolling, and she's a true hero too. I mean, we're up here, but she deserves a lot I'm very grateful for her. But they were just discussing some things like on her phone, she's got pictures of all kinds of documents and things that were in the house and things that they found. And they mentioned to me that he had large quantities of bleach and acetone, like take nail polish, acetone, and what was the other thing?
Epsom
Epsom salt.
salt.
Epsom salt. So I thought, oh, gosh, I guess I've watched too much Breaking Bad. I was like, well, can you dissolve a body with that, those things? I don't know. I'm not a chemist. And so this morning I got my Starbucks because I'm on Eastern time. It's 4:30 in the morning. None of you are up. And I got on my phone and I Googled, and right away it said acetone and bleach make chloroform, which is something that if you've watched movies, you've seen people put that on a rag and put it over a woman's face, and they pass out. It was used as an anesthetic. So the mystery is, was he planning to use that on anybody? Had he used that on anybody? Was he anesthetizing himself? You know, how easy was he accessing, drugs? And then I did remember a detail when he was in nursing school. He took a master's level toxicology course that I thought was very strange. Why are you taking something harder than you need to take? And that just, that sparked that memory. He's being his own little chemist and making chloroform. I mean,
We also thought the bleach could be cleaning up a crime scene.
crime scene. But why does a guy need acetone?
Right.
He wasn't putting on nail polish. Right?
Well, you don't know.
Well,
We don't know everything about John.
that's right.
I mean, I think it just gets at this idea that every time you kind of scratch the surface of John Meehan, we learn something. And with the story being published and Christopher having all of these people approach him with all of these other stories, you scratch it a little bit and there's more. Several readers wrote in, including Jack Neworth and Cindy I, who have been very concerned about how you have all healed in the wake of this. How have you recovered from this individually and as a family? Like, what kinds of things have you done to bounce back? So who wants to? Do you want to start, Terra?
Sure. Well, lots of therapy. I did a lot of EMDR for the trauma, and going through the trauma, just the whole story, and then it rewires your brain to where you think differently about it, and the triggers go away from like the PTSD.
Because you were quite anxious in the months following, right?
Yeah.
How did that manifest itself for you?
Well, at first I was in shock, and then just like little noises, loud noises. If I was in a restaurant and people were talking, I'd get super agitated. I didn't want to be there. I would break down and cry a lot. It was such a process.
Barking of a dog.
Oh, yeah. Barking with the dog at the dog kennel. I couldn't work. I would just have meltdowns.
Wow. What has been an important part of this process for you, Tonia?
Well, a couple of things. One, sharing my story, I've gotten tremendous support. Everybody has a story. It might not be the same as yours, but people share their story. When they know that your life isn't perfect anymore, they're more willing to share maybe a side of themselves, and so that support. But I think the main thing, or one of the main things, was I had to forgive myself. I had to forgive myself for, not listening to my brain, not listening to some of those things, for not choosing a better father for my children, which is kind of strange because I wouldn't have those children without him. And I did replace him with a great man I've been with for 14 years, who's been a wonderful father.
Shout out to Augie.
What about you, Deborah? What have you personally done in the wake of this?
I had guilt like you wouldn't believe. It was hard. It was really hard. Sorry.
It's okay.
It's a little bit more raw for Deborah.
Yeah,
I've had
raw.
more time. Yeah.
I mean, I think it just gets.
Sorry.
It's okay. It's okay. I think it just gets at the idea.
Yeah.
I mean, for us, the fact that you spent as much time talking to Christopher as you did, and coming here tonight and being willing, facing an audience and being willing to talk about this.
Okay, I'm ready to answer.
Very personal story, I think, is remarkable.
Yeah, the guilt was, again, horrendous. I wanted to educate myself on trying to understand what was the truth and what was a lie with John. And so I reached out to his family, which was important. I reached out to others. I learned about sociopaths, psychopaths. I just wanted to understand the whole process. Why me? Why did I go through this? I feel that I just adore my kids and appreciate the fact that here we are and that she's alive.
Yeah. And he targeted, we were both targets. And, she needs to forgive herself too, but it's not gonna happen overnight. Yeah.
It takes time.
It takes time.
Thank you so much for
Oh,
being
you're
here
welcome.
tonight. Please, please, please give them a huge round of applause.
Thank you.